Who the heck is that? All right. Are we up? Yeah, there we go. It didn't come through on my end for a second there.
YouTube.
Yeah, we're up. Hello, Hawkeye fans. Welcome to the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. That was a little bit of an adventure today, but we are here. Scott Docterman, you see on the other side, if you were on YouTube from The Athletic. I am Rob Howe. We are not on our day or time we're supposed to be on, but we're on. So take that for what it's worth. It's kind of a strange time of year. Scott was in Chicago this week for a work function, was tracking some potential breaking news this morning. That's why we were down. Didn't happen. So now we're up. And I made it through Menards and Hy-Vee in the same day. So I feel like I'm winning, Scott.
You are winning, Rob. Tweeting is winning. No, it's been a weird day for me. I apologize for not being able to do it yesterday. We were coming back from Chicago. We had our annual summit from The Athletic, which is always interesting. We had a series of meetings and really open discussions about all the major topics affecting and impacting college sports and how we're going to cover it and what we need to look at, from NIL to the collectives to the portal to existential situations. So it was really fascinating. A lot of really good discussion, some good ideas, and got to see a former colleague now my current colleague that I work with, Kennington Smith, who's now covering Alabama for us. And we took a selfie together, and then also
Nice.
we did some karaoke the other day, and those videos remain under lock and key. But
That's too bad.
I hope nobody took any of me. But had our annual beer exchange. So yeah, it was good times. But I didn't make it yesterday, and then today we were tracking something that I think is, we thought it might happen today. I thought it might happen today, but actually it'll probably be more like next week or something.
Always able to adjust here on the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. And speaking of NIL, we didn't talk about this before we started recording, but the NCAA California USC situation that I think was kind of talked about and people saw coming. Will be interesting to see how that plays out. And then I saw something again this morning where the government was getting involved again, trying to regulate the NIL. So this is just muddy. It's going to be muddy until the student athletes are employees. They get representation where, as you've said all along, they get a seat at the table. Otherwise, there's no organization.
It's going to be hard for them to even do anything with it at this point, because anything that the administration or college administrators, the NCAA, even Congress wants to do to try to regulate it, it restricts commerce.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you do that? It's almost the same way as telling coaches that, well, we're going to put a cap on your salary. You can't do that. Schools could do it, but individually, but not collectively. And
was it Lindsey Graham throwing his hat? Is that who I saw this morning? It was somebody. I saw a tweet this morning about them trying to put, like you said, a cap on it, which it's not going to happen.
No, because Howard, now that it's all, use your cliche, the toothpaste is out of the bottle and whatever, you're not going to be able to put it back in. I mean, you're seriously going to tell people, all right, these athletes that, the schools are going to pay you $50,000 a year to play football, but you're not going to be able to get any NIL money. You're not going to be able to, benefit from a collective. That is, the ship has left the port on that. So I think in this case, it's about finding some ways to make rules. And yes, I think unless they can have a seat at the table, to collectively bargain, that's probably the best path forward for, in a lot of cases, that might be able to smooth out some of the rough edges. But otherwise, it's just a system that's just not going to change. Because why should the athletes want it to change? If you're making $4 million or $2 million or $100,000, for NIL, then why would you want it to change when it would go only hurt you financially, and it restricts your trade, and then you're going to lose another court case 9-0. So I think this is one where they piddled around too long, and the earthquake came, here's the best analogy. It's like Krypton. Everybody knew it was going to blow up. They ignored it, and then finally it blew up, and then they're like, what happened? Well, here we are.
We got blowed up.
Yeah.
Nothing new, at least as far as I know. Maybe you've heard something on the gambling investigation front, but Iowa baseball continues through. They play at 4:00 today in Evanston without the student athletes who haven't been named or anything like that. It's more just, connecting dots at this point, who's not playing and who was playing. And is not hurt. So I know Rick Heller said, I don't know if this was the end of the last weekend series or sometime this week. I read it somewhere. I apologize for not citing who it was, but that he was hoping that there would be a conclusion, or he got an indication there would be a conclusion relatively soon. That's not happening. I find it hard to believe that it's going to happen before the end of this regular season, Scott. At this point, they play at 4 today and 1:00 tomorrow. So unless there's the 5:00 Friday news dump that we love, it looks like those guys won't play at least during the regular season. And then next weekend is the Big Ten tournament in Omaha.
Yeah, I could see. Yeah, this weekend you just forget about it. I mean, today and tomorrow. You think they're really going to? I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe the NCAA will surprise us on this one. But every athlete, all 26 or whatever, are ineligible as we speak. That's what they have to do. The schools have to deem them ineligible, and then you go through the reinstatement process through the NCAA, which is okay. This is what Keaton Anthony did. This is how he bet. And then they go. So
we're up to 7 games now, right? It'll be 9 if they sit out today and tomorrow, which is likely. That's how many games they play?
Well, they're going to be a little north of 50 after this week.
Okay, so that's a 20% roughly, a little less than 20%.
Yeah, that's like 18 or so. So they could be, and depending on the situation, what their statement was, how much they gambled. I know Chad Leistiko did a nice job of getting a lot of that information last week. Who spent what. So I think overall, that's really going to be the challenge here is, did any of these players, do they wager small amounts? If they did, then they got a chance to be reinstated, and maybe, their sentence would be games already served. Kind of like, the jail time already served, for driving under suspension or something like that. But no, that's the best case scenario for them right now. But we don't know, specifically who all are that way. The ones in the fall, football, men's basketball, especially, the process will take care of itself. It's going to be completed way before that. And I anticipate the NCAA will want to make this an example, but they're probably not going to want to come across as punitive either. So I would anticipate them trying to really keep it pretty narrow in how they, what kind of punishments come up, and try to be fair, but also, apply some punishments that are just as well, because if they're not going to do anything, then what's going to stop everybody else from doing the same thing?
Yeah, we can't even really gauge how impactful it's going to be, because we don't know which student athletes, are involved here for football, men's basketball. What, like Scott said, how much did they gamble? How many times? All of those things factor in. So you can't make a direct parallel to what we're seeing here in baseball, because the baseball players may have been more at fault, for lack of a better term, than so we're just really going to have to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I mean, somebody may have bet, I mean, the case that everybody looks at, and rightly so, is the Virginia Tech guy who, made about $400 worth of bets and initially was suspended for 9 games, and then it was trimmed to 6 on appeal. He also made more than 100 bets, so that's different. So,
was he betting $4 at a time?
Yeah, like a lot of small numbers.
See, I think if you do something like that, that to me doesn't line up, because that doesn't seem like somebody with a gambling problem. He's not using insider information to bet $4.
Well, and it's like, you look at it like that total amount of money, it's enough to sway some things, but it's also that many times, but then again, that's why I think this is it's complicated for the NCAA and the players and the schools and the teams. But I think it's also it's something that everybody has to be careful. And I think the NCAA does, because it doesn't want to come across as heavy-handed. You're all banned. But if they bet on their own school, it's over, and then there's also hey, they're not necessarily victims here. They knew the rules. They chose to do it anyway. But then again, we also know that 19 and 20-year-olds are going to do that no matter what, because that's their nature.
It's not. I saw a story this week of one of the Iowa State coaches talking about it being a witch hunt. I mean, again, they know that they're told over and over again that they can't gamble.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe with the new landscape of, legalized gambling in the country, maybe there needs to be an adjustment to these rules, and maybe that's what comes out of this. But it's not. This didn't sneak up on anybody.
Mm-hmm. Right. Everybody knew it. The one thing that has changed that's made it more challenging for them and for everybody else is, it's been, I think, 2 years where you can just sign up online. You don't even have to go to a casino to get gambling props, let alone, 4 years ago when it was sports betting was legalized. So now in the last 2 years, there's been an explosion in amount of money bet from, and athletes, hey, athletes are competitive people by trade, and and competing isn't just on the floor, on the field. It's competing over, video games. It's competing over card games. It's competing over who gets to the bathroom first, and there'll be a wrestling match in the hallway of an apartment. I mean, it's competing over anything, shotgun in a car, and of course, betting on a sports event. So it's just, but they know better. It's kind of like when athletes get in trouble, get arrested, OWI or something like that. And there's probably a greater stigma with that than there even used to be a few years ago. But still, it's like, I can't completely condemn them, because I know a lot of people who have gotten them, at least they didn't get anybody hurt. But then again, it's like, but they're also on scholarship from the University of Iowa, and my friends were not. So that's that too. So
you can't say, everybody's doing it and we're not the only ones doing it. It's kind of like getting a speeding ticket. I mean, if everybody's speeding, and you're going with the flow of traffic and you're the one that gets nailed, tough shit.
Yeah.
You knew the speed limit was posted, and you were going over it.
Exactly. And yes. All right. You could bust me about any time for going too fast, but certainly yesterday from coming back from Chicago. But, it's also, that's why there are cops there. That's why there are radar. That's why there's, the S curve in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah.
I mean, we've known about it. I've gotten busted there. So even though it pisses me off when somebody speeds by me or starts tailgating me practically when I approach it and I'm going 55, I'm like, dude, I've already had a couple of these tickets. I hate them,
Yep.
lost my fantasy football money one year because
At least you won.
I know. At least I didn't have to pay out really on my, but it was like, yeah, what am I going to spend this money on? Well, now I figured it out.
The city of Cedar Rapids is what you're going to spend the money on.
Yes, bastards.
Just to segue into the actual competition, Scott, it hasn't impacted Iowa baseball negatively to lose one of its best hitters and other guys on the team. And a lot of it has to do with pitching. The pitching staff, the starting pitchers have kind of come around and the bats have come alive, and 15-3 yesterday in Evanston. They'll play again today, as I said earlier, at 4 today, and then 1:00 tomorrow. I think they moved these series up a day for the end of the regular season, just for rainouts and things like that, and to give them a little extra rest before they get to Omaha, right? Is that what the thought process is?
Yeah, it's a couple of reasons. One is that way to because now they're out of school in most, I think, all situations. So now, all right, move it back a day. And then two, you do have the Big Ten tournament, and you got teams that, and they built in an extra day in the Big Ten tournament now because of rainouts, because they've had so many different issues. So it all makes perfect sense to go ahead and do that and, start playing a little bit earlier and Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And here we are. This is Iowa right now is in really good shape. I mean, other than, losing that one rainout game. I mean, it's half a game out of second place, and it's playing the worst team in the league, and it, by battering, Michigan State and Ohio State the way it did, it's now kind of, on a good path. It's just, it's 38-12. And, it really, the only problem for them is playing Northwestern's a bigger problem than anything else, because Northwestern sucks so bad that every time they beat them, that their RPI drops. Yeah,
they dropped two spots from yesterday. They won 15-3 on the road and dropped 2 spots in the RPI from 29 to 31. So, yeah, a loss here is going to ding the RPI. So I think they're okay, as long as they win one of these next 2 at least. You lose two to Northwestern, that would not be good. So that shouldn't happen. Baseball's a strange game, though, and you have pitching that is such a big part of it that it can impact what's going on. Indiana's 1 spot ahead of Iowa at 30, and then Maryland. Is Maryland the highest RPI, or is it Iowa and Indiana?
Well, Maryland.
No, Maryland's at 46.
Oh.
So Indiana is 30, is the highest RPI in the league, and Iowa's second at 31. So, and as you said, standing wise, chance to win a regular season title here too. You never know. I don't know who Maryland is playing and Indiana's playing this weekend, and what the tiebreakers are and all that stuff, if it was a 3-way tie or whatever. But really, the NCAA, getting back to the NCAA tournament is really that's the main goal. And this team has done a nice job. We've seen, Scott, that recent years that they put themselves in position to get in going into May, in the beginning of May, and then stumble down the stretch. As you said, they haven't done that this year, and that's good to see. And especially when you consider the off the field stuff that's going on with the gambling, it's should be applauded.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they've done a really nice job of putting that in their rearview mirror, and the schedules help them out too quite a bit. But Maryland plays at Penn State, and Indiana plays Michigan State, and Indiana lost to Michigan State yesterday. But Iowa loses the tiebreakers with both of them because they only won 1 out of 3 against each one of those teams. But still, they've done a nice job of kind of circling the wagons or whatever since all this kind of broke 2 weeks ago. I mean, they've, in the Big Ten, they've won 6 out of 7. Going into today, they play at 4, and tomorrow they play at 1. So, that's they've done a nice job of that. And Rick Heller has proven that he's a terrific coach, no question, and putting everything together there. So, but you do have to take care of business. Even, you try to provide yourself a buffer, but I think if if you lose a game to Northwestern, you put yourself in a position where you can get excluded the way I think Rutgers did last year. When Rutgers won like 40 some odd games and didn't get in, and you'd hate to be in that position again. And, likewise, if Maryland loses to Penn State and doesn't win the automatic bid, it could be on the bubble too. And that's always a scary prospect.
Baseball America, to which I subscribe, has its projected field that it put out on Wednesday. I like this one, Scott. It's got Iowa and Terre Haute, Indiana, with Indiana State being the host. And that would be cool for Rick Heller. He wins his 1000th game this year, won a lot of games in Terre Haute, and that would be kind of cool, I think. Cool storyline.
Yeah, they gave him a good, lifeline after the UNI situation, and he did a nice job there. He did a nice job everywhere he's been, Upper Iowa, UNI, Indiana State, now Iowa. So it would be cool to see him there. And that's probably one where they could compete. That's really what you want.
It would have Indiana State as the one, and their seedings are different for baseball, just so people know. They're the 16th overall. But they would host one of the regionals with Tennessee, Iowa, and Wright State.
That's
got to figure Tennessee's probably pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. Wright State's, in Cincinnati, and some of those teams are pretty nice, especially for being right there on the border. I'm sure it goes into Kentucky and Tennessee quite a bit with some of those games. So, but it sounds also like one where they're not going to have to go in and pray that they get a good performance right away. And I mean, obviously you're going to want to play well, but I think they've got it. They'd have a shot in that one.
Mm-hmm.
If you're starting off and you're going to somewhere, deep South, you're probably going to be lucky to win one or two games. So I think they would have a shot in that one.
Looking in here on the Iowa softball team, Iowa is ahead 3-0 after 2 against South Dakota State in the softball equivalent of the NIT being played. Where is this thing played? Fort Collins, Colorado. So Hawkeyes, nice to see. I mean, you're going to be in it. You may as well win it, right?
Yeah, I like this. I like this for this team. And go somewhere. I think there are 8 teams there, and you're just playing. They did the same thing with golf.
4-0.
Had an invitational, and it was down in Arizona or someplace, I think. And so I think that's fair for these teams. And they play. Iowa softball had a really nice bounce back season. They weren't good enough to be an NCAA tournament team, but they get a nice little reward and a good trip. And now that we're got COVID in the rearview mirror, they can afford to do these things, and here they are. So if you're there, might as well win it. Go get a trophy. Feel good about yourself afterwards.
Yep, added another run. They're still batting on the bottom of the second, up 4-0. So keep an eye on that. You can check out HawkeyeSports.com if you want to follow along with that game as it happens. Let's take a little break here, and Scott and I will be back on the other side. We're going to talk a little bit about Iowa football's 2023 recruiting class, which will be arriving here on campus within a matter of weeks. We're going to kind of comb through that a little bit, see if there's anybody on there we think might be able to get in some playing time this year. It could be tough, but we'll dive into that after the break. I want to let people know that our listeners know that support for the podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. That is sui.org. Systems Unlimited. We thank them so much for their support and the great work that they're doing here for folks in Eastern Iowa. We'll hear from a couple more sponsors here, and Scott and I will be back on the other side. Hang in there. And we are back. Thank you guys for hanging in there. Thank you to our sponsors. Before we dive in here, I did solicit questions in the chat room from folks, being as we don't have a lot on the bone right now for Iowa sports, as the On Iowa podcast with Scott and Mark used to call this, the season of extreme platitudes.
Horse latitudes.
Horse latitudes and platitudes.
Yeah. Yep.
But Dino in the chat room, do you think women's basketball games abroad, the women are going to, I believe, Italy and where else? I know Italy.
Croatia.
Croatia. Dino is asking if those games will be televised in some fashion. I would really doubt it. Most of those overseas trips are not. Some of them are streamed if you get lucky. I did not read the release, so I could be talking out of my ass right now, which would not be the first or last time that happens on this podcast. But normally they don't televise these, Scott, or am I remembering that wrong?
No, you're remembering it right. And this is one of those where you're dealing with the fact that they've turned over third-party rights to BTN. They would have to, BTN would have to, Plus would have to be a part of it. And it is very complicated. My guess is, no, they're probably not going to do that.
Plus time difference. Who knows when the games would be on?
Yeah, because I remember when, one time the men went to Europe and then, oops, the French team had Pierre Pierce on it.
I remember that too. Yeah, not good.
Yeah, that was like, 10 years ago or something like that. And so I don't expect him to play against the Iowa women. But this doesn't take place until August. And I read the release this morning. So it doesn't say anything about it. It just says kind of where they're playing. So we'll have some of those answers late in the summer, but my guess is it's probably unlikely. And
they could send a videographer, as I say that right?
Sure they will. Yeah.
That will be able to shoot and send highlights back. So I'm sure you'll see stuff on social media, just like start to finish games. I think you're going to be hard pressed to find on that. Dino also says, I heard there would be an event at Extreme Arena with Iowa men's and women's basketball this July. I had not heard anything. You hear anything about that?
Well, I've heard that there's been discussions about that. I haven't heard it's been finalized yet. And whether it's at Extreme Arena or Carver Hawkeye Arena, I know that there have been discussions about possibly setting up something for the collective where, they might have like 3-point shooting contest, maybe some other, a couple other kind of fun events around, basketball or whatever to help benefit it. So I haven't heard anything finalized, but I have heard it's been under discussion. So,
well, for any of you that have been in Carver Hawkeye Arena in the summer, you're going to hope that thing is at Extreme, where there's a little air conditioning, because it is hot in Carver in the summer.
Yeah, it's miserable. So I think some of the more miserable times I can remember were volleyball. I've been to volleyball sometimes in August, and that's miserable. And I know you have, because your daughters have been there. And then the other one would be, remember the old Shirts and Skins, like Labor Day weekend and stuff.
Yep, hot as hell.
Yeah, it's like
sitting on the sun.
I'd rather go outside and cool off.
Yeah, let's play on the playground. At least we'll have some air.
Yeah.
But we'll see if that pops up. And it's a good idea. I mean, if they can, raise some money for the collective, that's a good idea. Martin Timms said he was waiting for our podcast, and he said it can't be a complete week until he watches us. And we appreciate that, Martin. Brad from the Swarm said about Extreme Arena, Dino said. So that looks like the one that they're targeting, and that makes sense. They can open concessions there. It's for those that haven't been to Extreme, it's a really nice venue for something like that. They had Soldier Salute Wrestling did the Soldier Salute there that I went to early this season, which was nice. So good venue. I'll be there. I will be there June 4th. For City High graduation. And I know I'm going to get emotional, Scott. So I'm preparing myself for that. You just went through your second college, not you personally. Your daughter just graduated from college last week. How was that?
was great. It was kind of like a nice exhale, exclamation point to, a life well lived. I really didn't, I got a little bit emotional, but not much, comparatively to some of the others. And I think your first kid's high school graduation is probably more so that way. So yes, be prepared, bring some extra Kleenex, Rob, and I'm glad they're going to Extreme, because usually it's at Carver. And one little funny story, when my son, he went to West High, and they all threw their caps in the crowd, threw them all up, and he went to go try.
This was at Carver?
Yeah, this was at Carver, and went to go try to find us. He couldn't. Somebody must have picked it up or whatever. So I was going to go down on the floor and help him look for it. And then, of course, the security guards, typical security, like, no, you can't come on the floor. And I'm like, I'm in a jacket and a tie. I'm just trying to help my son find this. No, you can't go there. And so we had to like wait.
Classic.
One of the teachers that he liked at West High, and he was like, can you go help him find this? And I'm just, typical Carver, they're like, you know what they are, Rob? They're like officials in pro wrestling.
They are.
It's like, let's stop these people from going and doing their job or going to help their son find their cap after graduation, but turn their back, and then all of a sudden stuff really hits the fan.
Yep,
so,
they get the brass knuckles out and give them a noogie.
Yep, it's just crazy. So yes, I'm glad that they're going to be an Extreme Arena for you rather than Carver Hawkeye.
Yep, it's coming quick. We're getting ready. My son's counting down the days. I think he's had 8 more school days left. So
Wow.
Speaking of kids that are graduating, here's the segue.
Yes.
There are a bunch of kids graduating that will be here on campus to play football. I did a podcast and a story, short feature story on Maddox Borcherding Johnson, defensive tackle from Norwalk, the first commitment in this class. He committed on July 7th, 2021.
I remember that.
Camped at Iowa State, got an offer, knew it was Iowa, had been invited to Wisconsin, Minnesota, also camped at Nebraska as well. But did a story with him, and he's rooming with Ben Keeter. So a pair of Iowa State wrestling champs. For those that don't know, Maddox was undefeated in wrestling this year and won the heavyweight title. Then Ben also won his 4th title, so they will room together. And we're going to kind of massage this a little bit and obviously there are surprises every year. You just don't know what positions they'll be needed at, and sometimes that dictates what guys will play and how much they'll play. Maddox said he's kind of gunning for, he's coming in at defensive tackle. So there's probably not a good chance he's going to play defensive tackle this season as a true freshman with what they have coming back. He's shooting for, hopefully, to make ground this year and then maybe take that step forward next spring, which I think is a great goal. And all of these guys, as long as they come in here with realistic goals, Scott, they won't be disappointed.
Everybody should come in with the idea of, I'm going to compete and compete to play.
Yep.
However, coming in with that attitude and then you're recognizing your current reality are two different things. And I think in his case, unless it's break class in case of emergency, he's not going to be out there. And if he's out there, it's an situation, unless it's at the very end of a game once. So, he's a kid we've seen. I think he's set the record, at least from what I've seen, a number of visits on game day. I think I've seen him on every single Iowa game day.
He told me he made every one but Nevada.
Okay.
The last 2 seasons, he and his brothers have attended every single home game. He went to 13 Iowa games the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, every time we stand down there before the game and take pictures, it's like he's one of them. And so, a delightful young man. He committed at a pivotal part and, for Iowa and he's been around for a long time. So let's see what he can do. But yeah, I don't, you talk to him. I haven't talked to him yet on the record or anything, but I look at him as probably somebody that's probably 2 years away.
Reminds me a little of Noah Shannon. Same kind of build, same kind of high school pedigree. Those are the guys that do well in this program.
Well, exactly. He's a little bit taller.
Yeah.
And he's got a chance he's an in-state kid who's, comes in, works hard, does the right things, and then voila, in 2 years or so, maybe he's a rotation guy. In 3 years, maybe he's an actual player, a starter or a heavy rotation guy. I mean, there's really a process to being able to get in there, and it's going to take some time. And then when you look at who Iowa has at that position ahead of him, I mean, there are at least 3 NFL guys, at least 3. And there are a couple others who are really good college kids. I mean, I think if healthy, Y.A. Black, certainly Aaron Graves, and they're not even starters,
right.
But they're NFL guys. Logan Lee's an NFL guy, and Noah Shannon, I'd love to say that he is, but he's challenged vertically, I think.
And who knows with Ontario Thompson?
Yeah, and then Ontario Thompson. So, and then what if Brian Allen or Crawford gets in there, Caden Crawford? So, he's way, way, way in the back right now. So his focus should be on, I want to do everything in my power to try to play, but, otherwise be the best player on the scout team you can be, and then be in the accelerated lifting schedule. So when you do get on the field, and at some point you can compete. But he'll get his share on scout team. And as long as he improves there, he'll help the team.
If we're looking at this just from most likely to redshirt, I think you can put him in that box. I think you could probably put Marco in that box with Cade McNamara, Marco Linnaeus, the quarterback coming in from New Jersey. I think probably the true freshman offensive lineman.
Yeah. I mean, out of the 4, Rob, I mean, I look at Leighton Jones as a probable redshirt.
Yeah, I talked to him. He plans to redshirt. He kind of told me, he's like, like you said, Scott, he's coming in here to compete, and if he can break through and play, great. But he knows that there's the odds are that he's going to redshirt. Yeah,
and that's fine. They need a center on the scout team, and he's going to get all the game he wants, competing against Aaron Graves and Noah Shannon in practice. So you're going to be competing against tougher competition there than you will in most games. CJ Leonard, I think, is a project long-term, or Cannon Leonard, I'm sorry. Giant guy, good athlete, I think, for his size, but he's also a project. I think he is 2 years removed from saying, we think he can play, to, I don't know if he can. We're so early in that process, so I guarantee he's there. Same thing with Cade Piper, although he had a great shot put and everything, but he's also, he's too small to play Big Ten football at that position. And then, the only one that I would give even 10% chance of playing or seeing any action, even as a redshirt, for a couple of games, would be Trevor Lauk. I think he's the 4-star of the group. I mean, of course, if we had a different guy who's at Alabama now, then I would give that 100% chance of plays. But I do think with Trevor Lauk that there's a chance he could end up on the depth chart, and there's a chance that he could maybe see some limited action in 4 games, and then next year be competing for a spot. But the other 3, I don't see. I just don't.
Yeah, when they added Rusty and Dejan out of the portal, that decreased the chances of these guys getting through. And I think they kind of knew that was going in. But I would agree with you. I think Trevor's probably, out of that group, the most likely to play. But it could be something like what Connor Colby was able to do as a true freshman, that type of situation. But chances are they're set there. Let's talk about the receivers, Scott. Obviously a position of need, not as big of a position of need with Caleb Brown coming in. That changes the landscape a little bit. But we have Alex Moda, locally from Marion. Who else am I missing here?
Jarrett
Bowie from Florida, and Howard from Missouri, right?
Yeah.
Dayton Howard.
Yep. So those 3, I think it's really unpredictable, Rob. I don't know. And, whereas I feel pretty sure at most positions who might play and who might not play. I think at receiver, it is a big question, because if anything happens like last year, yeah, somebody's going to play for sure.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't totally shock me, because other than Moda, who I know a little bit about, I really don't know much about these guys other than their huddle videos. I could, I wouldn't be shocked to see a walk on,
Yeah.
vaulting, an Aiden Price or Aiden McDermott, getting a real crack there. So I don't know that any of them are one of those 4-star guys. None of them are. I know that, but are any of those guys that you walk in and you go, all right, I think this guy's got a chance to play right away. If I was to make a guess, it's only because of familiarity that I would say Alex Moda. But even then, that's very, very premature.
Yeah, just flipping through here. Defensive back wise, Kirk had talked about potentially addressing that in the transfer portal. The last time we talked to him at the end of spring ball, they didn't add anybody since then. So maybe that's a position. I know Nestor is more of a safety. I think most of these guys are safeties. Lutmer, who I like a lot. Khalil Tate. Khalil Tate, I think maybe has a chance at corner, but probably more safeties this group.
Yeah, and I don't know about Tegan Davis.
Yeah, he seems like a safety too to me. So I don't know, but that's one of those things where I think Phil gets him on the bus, gets him in the camp here, and kind of sees what he has.
Yeah, it's kind of like even with Riley Moss, who, I don't know if Tegan Davis is that type of a player or not, but that's the one that I would semi compare him to. And, they tried to put him at safety and realized after about 10 plays, they're like, yeah, he's probably more of a corner, and he played it well, and he's getting an NFL paycheck because of it. So this one, I think that there's a good chance of maybe one seeing action. And I think it's because of the depth that they have there. And I think but it's not, as we know, at the secondary level, especially at corner, the depth is good, but it's not really defined yet.
And not really proven.
Yeah, right. Because Cooper DeJean is one of the best in the country.
He's proven.
Yeah. Jamari Harris is still kind of rusty. You know?
And really he hasn't been a full-time starter for a full season yet. Yeah. So
2 years ago, he had 4 interceptions, and I think ended up with 6 starts, and looked decent at times, but he's been out for a full year, and they didn't get the corner that they wanted. And Notre Dame swooped in, and he's got more of an opportunity to start there. Here it was more of a competition, and then you look at the rest of them. Brendan Diaz-Fernandez last year was second team in the spring, but was out for the whole year. And what does that mean? And then you look at TJ Hall and Deshaun Lee. Are they going to make that step? Maybe, but we don't know. So if one of the incoming DBs in the fall all of a sudden stands out, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they balled up to the second team right away.
Yes. And they'll get a chance to prove themselves in camp, because they'll get a fair shake and a fair look at that point. And maybe not exactly like Cooper DeJean, but his true freshman year, Xavier Wongpa last year, there's something to be said for cutting your teeth and being a key member of a special teams unit, and then getting yourself prepared for maybe that next year where you can move into a starting spot.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's really important. If you're on the kickoff team and you're in a big, stadium, loud crowd, it's not your first action, and you're going to get the snot knocked out of you at some point. And that's something that's good for you in football, to have that happen. It hurts. Yeah. Sometimes it hurts, and sometimes it just shocks the hell out of you. But overall, you get some action that really is benefiting for you. Geno Stone led the team in tackles as a true freshman. He was a a 2-star that magically became a 3-star later. At least I saw he was a 2-star at the time. But
Amazing how that happens.
I know. I just don't understand how that. He was a 2-star the day before he signs, and then he's a 3-star afterwards.
Voila.
Yeah, let's bump him up. But so I could, in seeing what Iowa's done in the past. I mean, last year, 2 DBs played. Lost their red shirt in Wampa and Hall, and Trainer played in 4 games. On special teams. So I think there's a good chance that 1, maybe even 2. I could see 1 for sure playing up to 4 games, and I could see another one. Just depending on who asserts themselves. Maybe you're not even redshirting.
So we've talked a lot, Scott, about guys we don't think have are positioned to are in a favorable position to maybe break through. And again, we don't know. It happens. The injuries happen. Guys are better, hit the ground running. It's hard to predict. Couple guys though. You mentioned Aiden Hall, Ben Keeter. I think they're both coming in as linebackers.
Yeah.
Aiden's a little bit more of a Seth Benson type, I think. Kind of a little, not the biggest guy in the world, but really good athlete, played quarterback in high school. And then Ben Keeter, obviously, unless you've been under a rock, you kind of know who he is. I did notice here that On3 has Ben Keeter's NIL at $66,000.
Yeah, those are interesting figures. I think
Cade McNamara is at 152. And Nick Jackson is 192. How do they figure this shit out?
That's a good question, Rob. It's a valuation. It's not necessarily an accurate representation.
Okay. So, it says NIL value.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just cross my fingers on it. I don't really believe that, because I think there were a couple other players that were ahead of Caitlin Clark, for instance, in women's basketball, and a couple of them who were not nearly as high profile as her. And I thought, yeah, I don't see that. But she's with Nike. So I don't know.
Yeah, I saw she's doing something for Bose as well.
Yeah, she got everybody a Bose headphones.
Nice.
On our team, because of it. But Hall is another one where I think we'll start with him just as it's a question mark. If he could redshirt, he could play right away on special teams. And, Ben Keeter, if you were to say rank the ones that have a chance to play and maybe make the depth chart in a meaningful way and not redshirt, he would be number 1 on my list.
I'm in agreement with you,
because I look at the linebacking core right now. I mean, what was the absolute strength of this team last year is now, a weakness to some extent, and it's an unproven one. I mean, Jay Higgins is the veteran, but he only started 1 game. I mean, he did play 200 plus snaps and played well at times, but he was still the 4th best linebacker starting the season and 3rd best, midway through it. So, I expect him and Nick Jackson to form a pretty good tandem there at, in the inside backer. But who's behind him? There are a lot of guys who have got potential, but are unproven. I mean,
like you say, I mean, Higgins and Jackson are closer to the end of their careers. Jackson, especially.
Yeah,
you got to get guys ready.
Yeah, I mean, Kyler Fisher has been a really good special teamer. Maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. Carson Shire, they really like, but he hasn't really played. Then you got other guys, Jaden Harrell, same thing. Jackson Rexroth is a walk-on, but, he's kind of been in that 1/2 category. That's great, but he hasn't played. Van Kekerix and Montgomery and Zach Tweet are all in that same bubble there. So Ben Keeter, if he comes in and proves himself in the first fall camp, he can go straight to the top of the line. Going to be the number 2 backup, and they're going to be like, we need to get this guy as much action as possible because he might be a starter next year.
Yep.
And it would not shock me at all. In fact, I would, if you were to, I don't know if I want to bet on any kind of sports right now, but if I was to figuratively wager, I would say that I think I would give him as much of a chance as anybody outside of Higgins and coming back as being a starting linebacker in 2024.
And second, Terrell Washington Jr.
Maybe. Yeah. Do you think he plays? I mean, he's got 3 guys ahead of him.
Yeah. I just think about the injuries at that position, guys getting nicked up, even, here and there. But I look at it as he enrolled in January, so he's got a whole spring ball. And then, but you're right. I mean, are there enough carries to go around?
He could be a 4-game guy to me.
Yeah, that's true.
I
think you have to do that with the receivers too. I think you have to get those receivers some work in the 2 shitty non-conference games.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And then maybe
once they get to 25 points.
Yeah. Get to 25 points. All right. Go to 20. Just kick the field goal. It's 27-10. All right. Get out there. But yeah, I mean, I could see Terrell Washington getting 4 games. I could see him being like what Patterson was last year, playing a little bit here and there. As you said, there could be an injury that maybe forces him out on the field more. And I agree. I'd probably put him at number 2, maybe number 2B, where 2A would be one of the wide receivers, and I can't guarantee which one.
Yeah, because I like the 2 tight ends they're bringing in, but again, the path there, I don't see it unless there's an injury.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're looking at best they're going to be at best 5th.
Yeah, at best.
And that's. Lachey and all are guarantees. Ostrenga is 3rd, Stylianos is 4th, then Johnny Jacuzzi, is a walk-on, and Cale Vanderbush was there last year too. So I mean, it's going to be tough to walk in the door. Now what they could be on, whether it's Zach Ortworth or Grant Leaper, is they could be on the fast track as, okay, we need to get this guy out there as much as possible, and they do that a lot too, where one of them establishes themselves as. They're looking at this going, we're not going to have all next year. We might not have Lachey. We're not going to have Stylianos, and it's going to be Ostrenga and what? Well, we kind of think Zach Ortworth might be that next guy, the number 2 guy next year. So let's get him on special teams in every game and forget about the red shirt. I can see that one happening.
That would be like Ostrenga last year.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they did that with Laporta. In 19. That's something I could definitely see happening. It's just projecting
the likelihood is more that the guys Scott and I are talking about that are coming in, the best likelihood of them seeing the field is special teams.
Yeah, because it's not like last year when you looked at Wampa, and you're like, yeah, this guy's going to play, or both of those running backs. It's like one of them's going to play. We knew that. And it turned out both of them were pretty damn good. And in reality, Johnson was exceptional for his age. I mean, he has the most rushing yards for any freshman in Iowa history, or true freshman. And then Jazz Patterson looked the part to me, and Aaron Graves, of course, was another one where it's like, yeah, now you can't redshirt. But I think,
did 8 play last year that didn't redshirt? Does that sound right? I thought I looked that up earlier.
I have that number, Rob, and
I know Ostrenga, Wankpa, trying to think, Johnson.
Yeah, let me get my handy dandy notebook out here, and I can tell you.
Scott's got folders.
I've got some dead trees in my house, Rob, and they're all pretty. So that's the wrong one. I've got folders upon folders that have built. They're like potatoes, where you where after a while it's like, oh, there's another potato growing here, and that sort of thing. Let's see.
I'll give you an update on the women's softball score. We are now in the 4th inning. Hawkeyes up 6-0 over the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State.
Whoa, they're going to play for the title, aren't they?
They're trending that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, good for them. As you said, it's really a good situation when, you go to a place like that and you at least have an opportunity to compete. If you're going to compete, might as well win a championship.
Get the damn trophy. Bring home the hardware.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. All right. I think I'm getting close here. I think we got the right.
We're getting close. Yeah. I'm going with 8. I could be off on that. That sounds like a lot. some reason that number's in my head.
All right, true freshman tracker. Yay. Okay, two lost. Well, let's see. Here we go. Wampa and Hall played in every game. Bostic did not play many games. Caleb Johnson played in every game. Graves played in all but the opener.
That's 4.
Patterson played in 3 games. Drew Stevens, kicker, played in every game, and Ostrenga played in every game, and then Entringer played in 4.
So 6 did not redshirt.
Yes,
Is that right?
that's correct.
6 burned red shirts.
Wampa, Hall, Caleb Johnson, Aaron Graves, Drew Stevens, Addison Ostrenga. Entringer was up to 4 games. Patterson was up to 3 games. And that, I think, is it. And then starts, Caleb Johnson had 6 and Wampa had 1.
So definitely under that number this year, right? Would you say that
yeah.
burn?
Yeah, for sure.
What would you put it at?
3 or less.
Yeah, I think 3 is a good number.
You know, if I was to make a guess based on this without any obscene injuries or anything, I would say Heater, a defensive back, and a wide receiver. You know, and I don't know which DB and I don't know which receiver, but I would say that's probably the 3 that ends up seeing more than 4 games.
And then maybe throw a tight end in there as a possibility of special teams.
Yeah, maybe even Lauk if he comes along. You know, maybe he's more of a second team guy that they're like, yeah, we don't really want to burn his red shirt, but we do want him to get out there a little bit. You know, see some action in some of the end of the games, because I could see him being on the depth chart. You know,
yeah.
But you know, and then Lainez is an interesting one to me because I think it kind of depends in part how the season goes for McNamara. Now, I don't know. You know, I know he's got 1+. You know, he could use an extra year, McNamara. I know.
Don't you think he's thinking one and done?
I know Eric All is, and I'm sure he's trying to think that way. But let's put it this way: you know, he's 6'1", he weighs 206 pounds. Is he going to go to the NFL and be a first-round draft pick? I don't see it. He just doesn't have everything the NFL wants. So I could see him more as a second year here.
Can he be Sean Clifford
at the next level?
Yeah.
Sean's bigger though. Sean's like 6'4", 6'5". And even then he was like shocked. You know, people were shocked he got drafted in the 5th round. I could see McNamara being maybe a late round guy. And, you know, Stetson Bennett was kind of fit in that category.
I just wonder if it would help him to come back NFL wise. It would probably help him financially.
There are a lot of quarterbacks right now, Rob, nationally that have understood and continue to understand that it is smarter for them to stay in college and get an extra year of NIL than to attempt, especially with the COVID year. We saw that with Devin Leary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, went from NC State to Kentucky. He's making money. He was late round draft pick at best. Camp arm, probably gets cut. You know, maybe he sticks around, but it's a difficult situation. When you look at, you know, Cade, you know, I mean, I think he's a good college quarterback, and I think he can do really good things at Iowa. I would not predict that he can do that at the next level. I'm just not there with that. And, you know, maybe he goes to a camp. Well, I'm sure he would, but what happens next? It's unpredictable. So, you know, let's say he leads Iowa to the West Division title and he's got one more year, one more crack at it, and he can make the same or more in NIL at Iowa, or if he wanted to leave somewhere else. But my question would be then, you know, I think Marco Lainez has a chance that if he plays well, that he could be on that, you know, kind of like with Nate Stanley. Remember when Nate came in that summer, he was, it made all the sense in the world to continue to have Tyler Wiegers as your number 2. You know, he was the number 2 the year before behind CJ Beathard, but they brought in Nate and they were like, Nate's better, you know, and you can only imagine how that situation would turn out differently had he redshirted and in 2020 been the quarterback. It might have been a much different season for Iowa. So.
Yeah. And I mean, just looking at it objectively and what we know of the landscape of college football, there's going to be movement in Iowa's quarterback room here. You just, especially if McNamara stays 2 years, that's going to dictate. I mean, you've got Deacon Hill and you've got, Labus and Lainez coming in, and then Reeser's coming in on the back of that. It's going to be interesting to see how this stuff, sorts itself out.
Yeah, and they're looking at other quarterbacks too in that class. So, they're leaving no stone unturned. I tell you what though, the committed walk-on class, Rob, is really good.
Oh yeah,
I could see a couple playing out of this. First one I could see is Rusty Van Wetzinga at fullback.
Yep.
Because they found something in the most perfect Iowa fullback name ever, and Hayden Large.
Yep.
To come in and play right away. They need a number 2, and it might end up being Rusty. Especially with Eli Miller out, I could see that happening. Nolan DeLong.
Saw him play last year. Good player.
Really, really good player.
I saw McDermott play too. He's good.
Aiden
McDermott from Xavier.
Yeah.
Good play.
And another guy I thought that was a steal for them was Jalen Thompson.
Yep.
At tight end. He's a guy that, to me, I could see him jumping.
Jalen Thompson had a Northern Illinois offer.
Mm-hmm.
McDermott was committed to South Dakota State. I mean,
yeah,
that's impressive when you can get guys like that to walk on.
Right. So I don't see a whole lot of difference here between, and this is a good thing for the program, between some of their last offers, scholarship offer guys, and their high level walk-ons. And that means there's going to be a lot of competition, because if Jalen Thompson comes in and it's like, yeah, he's better than Ortworth and he's better than Leaper, he's going to be playing. And then he's going to be on scholarship. And then, same thing with Aiden McDermott or Aiden Price at receiver.
Like him a lot. Saw him too last year.
Right. If they got a chance, hey, they're going to play. I was never been afraid to play walk-on wide receivers. I think, a couple of the others, Watts McBride, he was here in the spring, if I remember. And, they've, Lord knows they've played enough walk-ons at safety over the years, and they've done pretty well. And, and I think having Tommy Pahulski is going to be a real good safety net for them for a while. So, and Nolan DeLong, whether he ends up at linebacker or another position, he's a damn good player. He's one that, find a way to get on the field. It's just where is it? He was such a good running back, but I think they've got a more earmarked at linebacker right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I was impressed with him playing linebacker. I saw them play West Branch. West Branch just housed them, but he stood out.
Yeah. And then a few of the other, they got some other good ones, like Jackson Filer is a guy that I think they'll probably find a role for.
Mm-hmm.
He's, unless they redshirt him, which I could see, I suppose, have him sit out a year and then come back. But, so there's a lot to like here. I think if anything else, this is a really good developmental class. This is like a perfect Iowa class that we're looking at a lot of these names, and they're not necessarily jumping off the page as they're going to help in 2023. But I think in 2026, there's 8, that could be starting, maybe more. And I would say a couple of these walk-ons will be among them. I think that's a really, really strong class of guys there.
Yeah, no doubt. And this class marries well with the current roster in terms of where you have experience and you can develop a Maddox, Borcherding, Johnson behind this group of defensive tackles. And we've talked about the transfer portal and all that and addressing needs, but the foundation of this program and men's and women's basketball is development. Baseball, most sports at Iowa, you're developing, and this group has a lot of potential. And I think those positions where you really need to build a foundation, wide receiver being number 1, this is where you have to start doing it. These 3 guys that are coming in, develop them, keep them in the program. Eventually hopefully they turn into Amir or Brandon Smith or Tavon Smith or whatever. You got to keep keep the guys that you're recruiting at that position. You have to develop and keep in the program, and you can address it somewhat in the portal, but that's a tough way to live to continue to do that.
I think now it's imperative to keep what you have at this position group. I mean, Nico's in his 6th year. He's not coming back after this one, not unless he can't play this year. And you've got Deontay Vines as a junior. You got Seth Anderson as a sophomore. You got Bostic and Brown now as redshirt freshmen. And underneath that, you've got, 3 more scholarship guys. You've got to keep these guys intact. You cannot survive at that position group with the kind of attrition that they've had over the last decade. Yeah, they need some stability and they need some growth and they need to improve. And that really hasn't happened. We've seen, Brandon Smith and Amir Smith Marset got better. I thought they still had more to offer by the end of their careers. Charlie Jones left. That left a big gulf, and then you look at the 3 in that class, that sophomore class that they lost out on. Keegan Johnson was a killer, man. I mean, talent-wise, he was everything they needed from that position, and he could have been so good. And now it'll be that way for K-State. So they've got to make sure these guys stay put and they develop them, because as we've seen, Rob, development at defensive back, awesome. Tight end, awesome. Defensive line, awesome. Linebacker, really good. Running back, so, but their talent hasn't been that great. Wide receiver, it's been strangely enough, it's been wide receiver and offensive line. Yeah, exactly.
With attrition, injuries, and whatnot.
Yeah.
And lack of development.
And it starts, in some cases, it starts with recruiting. It does really with, especially at offensive line, that they've really misidentified or, just not had the players that have worked. And, it goes back a ways too. When you start to look at, there were 2 in-state players that went to UNI and ended up as 1st or 2nd round draft picks.
Yeah.
And they missed on them as small town guys. It's like, whoa, Spencer Brown and Ben, the guy that went to UNI from Mason City Newman.
Penning?
Yeah. Trevor Penning. Yeah.
Trevor Penning. Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at both of those guys, it's how'd you miss on them twice? How'd Iowa State miss on them too, for that matter?
Yeah.
Because they've actually been in worse situations, but Iowa's had some really good players, but there's been a gulf, and they've been able to, up until about 2 years ago, they were able to kind of spackle over it with, a try-hard walk-on or a try-hard 2-star that really got it at the end of their career and played a pretty good role. Cole Banwart and Kyler Schott and guys like that. Hey, all right, they're getting it. They're tough kids, but they didn't have that last year. And then you had youth on top of it, and man, it was a killer. And they've got to do a better job. And again, is it George, or is it the develop? Is it the coaching? Is it just bad luck? Yes. But it doesn't matter anymore. You got to make it happen.
Yeah, and I think Kelton Copeland and George Barnett are on the clock now. Kelton's got 3 guys coming in, true freshmen. He's got Seth Anderson as a sophomore, Caleb Brown, who's a redshirt freshman. Those guys are all underclassmen and young. He has to do something with this group. Likewise with Barnett, he's got 4 true freshman offensive linemen in 2023. He's got 2 transfers coming in out of the transfer portal. Got to see progress at both of those positions throughout this year and then over the next few years in building back the foundation.
Yeah. And I can see more with offensive line just simply because the core is older and it was so young last year. I don't know if it'll be good yet. I've always thought, okay, I'll say that it's going to be better. I do believe that, but will it be good? That remains to be seen. I'm in a prove it phase with Iowa offensively. It's just, and when you start to look and you go, okay, Logan Jones, Connor Colby, Mason Richmond. All right. That's a pretty good foundation. I think they've got it there. Now they just got to go out and prove it. Now it's a matter of the other side. Can Rusty Feth yeah, he's the kind of guy that they didn't have last year. Maybe he's not an NFL guy. Maybe he is. I don't know. But he's
he's Kyler Schott at right guard.
Exactly. But that's what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Tough dude named Rusty. Going to go out there and do what you ask him to do. And then is Dejon Parker that guy, or is he just a good athlete that played at the Division II level? We don't know. Unfortunately for him, missing all that time, I think was really, really hurt. But they've got some good young ones behind them, but it's time for them to prove it.
Important year for those two positions. Not only what will be on the field, but what's behind the starters and guys on that depth chart to start to build that up. So if injuries and attrition happen, you have, a Kyler Schott to slip in there, or, as Scott said, a Colt Banwart, somebody that you've developed up through the program, and you're not stuck having to throw Connor Colby or Logan Jones to the wolves. And have to deal with those growing pains. Ideally, it happens. It's the nature of the sport. You just can't let it happen multiple times. And it's happening. Offensive line the last 2 years has been leaky. And the receivers just haven't produced the last few years. And you got to get back to being able to rely on those two positions.
Right. Because you look at you look at 10 years ago-ish on the offensive line. And even when they had injuries, Rob, they had guys who could step in. And, I remember, in that 15 season, at Northwestern, and they were down to like Sean Welsh moved outside, Cole Croston was playing tackle, and they still were able to get it done. You look at the 2017 season when they lost, God, what a killer for them. Boone Myers and Ike Butker. Really, Boone pretty much before the season, and then Ike against Iowa State. And then they're throwing in Alaric Jackson, and they're throwing in Tristan Wirfs really early. Okay, but then 2 years later, at guard, they were a turnstile, guys that should have been developed or should have developed didn't. And then likewise, last couple of years, it was kind of the same way.
We'll see what they can do. We're creeping closer. It's May 19th. Just so folks know, I don't know if I said that at the top of the podcast, that it's May 19th, a little before 2:30 p.m. Central Time. So you'll know when we're recording this update on the softball game, which will be over probably by the time you listen to this. Looks like South Dakota put a 3 spot up in the 6th. We got 6-3 in the 6th inning. So check that out on HawkeyeSports.com if you want to follow how that game ends up. But again, when you listen to this podcast, if you listen to us live in the YouTube chat room, you can check that out. But I think that's it, Scott. We've hit on it. We leave anything out? There's just, I got to get to yard work. I got to get the garden planted and the mulch down and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I got to finish a story that I was working on kind of sporadically through the day and losing my train of thought. So yeah, that's that. One thing when bringing up May 19th, one thing it kind of reminds me of is, I don't know if when you were growing up, every now and then you get these dates that people throw out as this day is the end of the world. And when I was in 8th grade in 1988, there was like this thing going around where May 19th, 1988 was going to be the day the world ended. And here we are 35 years later. It hasn't ended yet. So, when we lived through what was going to happen in the millennium. Yeah. When New Year's Eve, everything's going to Y2K.
Y2K. Yeah.
Yes.
We humans, we like to freak ourselves out.
Yeah, exactly. So 35 years ago today at Oak Street Middle School, the world was supposed to end. But
I'm glad we're still here and we're still doing the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. And next week, we'll shoot to be back on Thursday. No promises at this time of year, but hopefully we'll have some more news here. We'll know at that point Iowa baseball and the Big Ten tournament will kind of be in the heart of that, what's going on with that. So we'll have that to talk about. And I'm sure some more football and men's basketball, women's basketball, all that good stuff. We'll hit it all next week on the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast. Thanks to everybody who adjusted to our schedules this week. We'll try to get back on it next week. Until then, have a great weekend. And Scott and I will talk to you next